Hello again. In this video we'll be looking at learning how to point up, which is ideal for small jobs around the home. It doesn't matter if you're pointing a wall, a chimney, some slabs, or correcting obvious repairs to cracks like these. We're going to learn how to point up with a fairly standard weatherstruck finish like this, as well as a concave or bucket handle finish. We'll also take a quick look at how to blend sand together to try and match the colour of any existing mortar that you may be repairing or working with. In this video we will be working with a standard, cheap, easy to mix mortar, and if you don't know how to do that, I have a video available in the links below or via the links at the end of the video. We're also going to be using basic everyday tools like a standard bricklayer's trowel and a small pointing trowel. Although you could also buy or build your own mortar hawk if you want to, or even work with just a pointing trowel straight from the bucket itself. The pointing trowel I'll be using here is a 6-inch stainless steel pointing trowel, which is ideal for this type of work. Also, being stainless, even if you only use it once in a blue moon, you know it's not going to be rusty and useless the next time you use it. And if you want one of these, you can find it in the links in the description bar or at the end of the video. But before any pointing takes place, let's talk about the key. Now, the key, when we're talking about pointing, often refers to the quality or depth of the recessed gap we will be sticking the mortar into. This is actually a very good example. If we look at the depth available between these bricks, you can see it's quite varied. At the deepest, it could be 6 to 7 millimeters easily, but eventually it peters out to nothing. So if you were to point this up as it stands, which of course you could, the quality and longevity of your pointing will be better where the key is the deepest, and this is because the fresh mortar will have more mass and more surface area to stick to, resulting in a longer lasting job. Of course you can chase out the mortar from between the bricks, and that's done with a diamond chasing tool that can be hired from most tool hire companies at very low cost. Here I'm using mine with the safety guard and dust extractor removed so you can see exactly how it works. In this job I'm repairing some brickwork cracks to an outside wall of a house. If you look closely you can see two distinct areas I have already ground out. This bottom section here above a lintel below, and this triangular pyramid shape here that shows a crack line that we wish to repair and disguise. I've already chased the old mortar with a diamond chase to a depth of approximately 15 to 18 millimeters and brushed the joints clean with a soft bristle brush. The reason I've not gone to 25 millimeters as some people suggest is twofold. Firstly, I'm not looking to weaken this wall any more than is necessary by raking away too much material. This is especially true above lintels and on old chimneys. And secondly, experience just tells me this is not necessary in most situations. Right, now I'm going to mix some mortar in a bucket as seen in my video. For the sand part of the mix though, I will be blending these two building sands together. One is a very red building sand and the other is a much lighter orangey colour. And for this mix it will be 2 parts of the darker colour to 2 parts lighter and 1 part cement, giving me a final mix ratio of 4 parts sand to 1 part cement, or a 4 to 1. If you are trying to achieve a colour match like me, don't be afraid to make a few small mixes with different sands or ratios, and then let them dry out fully before you use them. Then you won't end up with a repair that looks like this, or like this. Right, let's get started. It's quite a hot day and the bricks are very dry, even though I'm in the shade here. So all I'm going to do, as you can see, is dampen the bricks and the chase with nothing more complicated than a handheld water sprayer. This should slow down the new mortar from drying too quickly and weakening the job, which can happen when the dry substrate sucks the water from the fresh mix. Next, get your pointing trowel and pick up a nice dollop of mortar and place it on the larger bricklaying trowel. Tap it in position and clean off any excess. What you have now is some mortar to work with that shouldn't slip or slide off too easily. What I'm doing now is tilting the large trowel slightly upwards and shaping the mortar into a slight wedge. This allows me to slide the compo up and off the large trowel with my pointing trowel, and again when I go back for more it's exactly the same process, and again shape it, pick it up, put it in. Now let's switch angle. As you can see, I'm picking up just enough wedge mortar so that I know it will go into the chase without being too large and smearing over the bricks. Now I'm pressing the mortar right back to the very back of the chase so there are no gaps behind at all. I'm not even trying to get a finish at this stage. Next, I top up and flush off before the mortar dries. Then I go for the finish. As you can see, I'm pressing the very top edge slightly harder to get a weatherstruck type finish. Now, I realise there are other techniques to pointing, but I find this method neat and easy to learn. It's also very good for pointing lead flashings or other waterproof details on houses. If you have any slight hairline gaps where the new mortar meets the old, I often just thumb in the joins to achieve a blend. And you can actually use the same technique for any accidental smears. Once 20 minutes or so has passed, you should find that any slight scruffiness where the mortar has been rubbed onto the top face of the brick can be simply cut away with the edge of your pointing trowel without too many dramas. Lastly, I like to knock off any loose ends and finish by lightly brushing with a soft bristle brush. Okay. So there's the finished job, and at the moment the repair is still quite obvious because the mortar is still drying. But as you can see, the effort in matching the colour really does pay off, especially in a year or two after some weathering when it will be virtually invisible. Next, let's take a look at the bucket handle finish. And the first thing that you will need is a bucket handle pointing tool. This is a commercially bought one and often come with two different radiuses. One for a deeper or shallower finish, or a wider or narrower brick or block gauge. However, if you fancy making your own though, this is one my dad made from a bit of old pipe by bending it himself, probably sometime in the 1940s. But to be honest, I much prefer it because it has some mass to it, and I'll mainly be using this end part here, and we'll see that in a minute. Again, as before, my technique is to point the wall in exactly the same fashion as we saw earlier, but without worrying about the finish too much. Now, I know some people like to point straight from the bucket handle pointer itself, but personally, I like to make sure that all the mortar is right to the back of the chase. Once the mortar has dried slightly, probably 5 to 10 minutes later, scrape off any mortar snags as before, just so that they don't get smeared by the bucket handle pointer onto the face of the bricks. Next, drag the bucket handle tool down the joints. Remember to not only press the tool home, but you can also change the angle slightly to adjust the depth of the curve in the mortar between the courses as well. In fairness, I've left this slightly too long, which makes finishing it a bit more difficult than it should have been. Finally, clean up if you wish once again by scraping away any face mortar before lightly brushing. This helps knock off any small mortar tags or mouse ears where the mortar in the vertical joints or perps meets the horizontal mortar bed. Once finished and the mortar dries out, you will find the repairs hard to see. When pointing chimneys like these, often they may not require grinding out because of the weathering they have already taken in exposed areas like the roof. As you can see, if I zoom in on the depth of the key, it can be adequate without taking your mortar grinder and dust extraction up the roof with you. Any moss or liching like this though will require a thorough wire brushing and then soft brushing to remove the loose dirt and dust. Pointing up then is obviously going to be the same as before, but this time with a slightly stronger mix of 3 parts sand to 1 part cement because of the weathering in this exposed location. This time though we have external corners to the chimney stack. My technique once again is to make sure any mortar is pushed right to the back of the chase and then around the corner for about 50mm or so. Don't forget to make sure the mortar is firmly home on both sides, and then I finish by pushing the edge of the mortar home with my finger, and that can now wait until I'm working on the other side to finish it off. The bottle sprayer once again comes into play to wet the joints thoroughly before the finishing touches are made to the chimney stack. So now you should be able to point walls and chimneys with just a little practice required. And that's the chimney stack done. I hope this video has been useful. Thanks for watching.